in following my example, brothers and sisters. And just as you have us as a model, keep your eyes on those who live as we do. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, you whom I love and long for, my joy and crown, stand firm in the Lord in this way, dear friends. This is the word of the Lord. Our second reading is from Luke chapter 13. At this time, some Pharisees came to Jesus and said to him, "Leave this place and go somewhere else. Herod wants to kill you." He replied, "Go tell that fox, I will keep on driving out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will reach my goal. In any case, I must press on today and tomorrow and the next day, for surely no prophet can die outside Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those who sent you. How often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Look, your house is left to you desolate. I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'" This too is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
As they're doing them pictures, let me just talk to you a bit about this. So Philippi, about 600 miles away from Rome. All right, it's a Roman colony. Loads of people who are ex-military used to go and retire there, and it was very much like Rome. All the architecture was Roman, the way that people dressed were Roman, the rules were Roman. It was very much like Rome, except it wasn't actually Rome. It was their citizenship was still back in Rome. They wanted it to be like Rome, but it wasn't actually Rome. It was Rome was back there. So when Paul's writing to this church in Philippi and he says, "Your citizenship is in heaven," they instantly are thinking, "Oh, I know what he's going on about here," because citizenship to a Roman was really important. If you had citizenship, you were able to vote. You were able to hold public office. You had legal protection. You were entitled to a trial. You had property rights. You were able to marry. You had some tax exemptions. You were able to join the military. We might find that as something that we don't want to do. But back then, being a Roman soldier was pretty cool. It had loads of benefits. And it had immunity from certain types of punishments. So being a Roman citizen was massively important. And Paul writes to them and say, as important as that is, as cool as that might be, having a citizenship in heaven is far better in many, many ways. And he says, he says like this, that you need to live your life as a citizen of heaven. So how do we live our lives? Well, Paul starts off by saying something that I don't think I could ever do, which is he goes, copy me. Imitate how I live my life. I think, what a cocky guy. Could you imagine me or Bev or Tom or whoever's preaching getting up going, "By the way, just do what I do"? It's bold, isn't it? It's a bold statement. But Paul says it, and he says, not only that, but also follow other people that are setting an example like me. Follow those around you who are living a good example. So what was Paul's example like? He always told others about Jesus. He had the joy in his life, even when he was in prison and being persecuted. He thought of others more than he thought of himself. He prayed for others. He knew that God would complete the work in himself and others. He loved others, and he did all things without grumbling and disputing. They're just all things that I could find in the book of Philippians that Paul did. Who are the people who you are following, imitating? Who are the Christian examples that you look up to and say, I'm following them? They're giving me a godly example to follow. But then also, on top of that, what kind of example are you to other people who are following you? How do you live your life? How do you think? It says in verse 15 of chapter 3, it says, all of us then who are mature should take such a view of things. And if on some point you think differently, that too God will make clear to you. About being mature, we should think in mature ways. I was saying this morning that we've got one child who's 21 next week, next Friday, she's turning 21. That means we're now officially ancient, I think. And then we've got little Flippity Flop, who is 4.5. And the difference in which they can process things and the maturity in which they do things is completely different from when you're 4 to when you're 21. Obviously, it's not always the case, because I'm 44 and still act like a child on most days. But you expect, don't you, in your children that they grow in maturity. When you're 4.5 and you've got 50p, you go and buy your packet of Smarties or whatever it is. When you're 21 and at university, if you spend all your money that you've got on sweets, then you can't pay your rent. So you have to learn, you have to mature in order to become wiser. So too as a Christian. We have to mature. You start off, you know a few things, and then you have to grow into maturity. How are you growing in maturity in faith? And just because you might be 107, don't think you've peaked yet. It's a long life, a whole life process of maturing with God, becoming more like Him, learning more about Him each day, every day. How are you doing it? Are you in a Connect group? Maybe you need to join one. And then the third thing is, what is your desire? What is your desire? Paul writes about there's some people who are, he puts it like this, enemies of the cross of Jesus. Their God is in their belly. That means they live for what they can get for, what's around them, what gives them instant gratification, what pleases them right there and then. That's what they want. And it leads to destruction. They're proud. They set their minds on things that are of earth and not of heaven. Fame, fortune, recognition, sin. That's what their desire is. As citizens of heaven, our desires shouldn't be for the earthly things, but should be for the things of God. How do you live? How do you think? What do you desire? And where are you going? When you accept Jesus as your Savior, when you recognize His death and resurrection and glorious ascension, you instantly become a citizen of heaven. You belong to heaven. And this earth becomes a temporary home until we get there. As a citizen of heaven, this is what we receive. We receive this. We will wait until we eagerly see Jesus. And then it talks about Jesus will take our earthly bodies and give us a heavenly body. And we will live with Him for eternity. And even though heaven is in the future, and this picture kind of points for something in the future, the reality is we become a citizen right now. We live here and now as citizens of Christ. And Paul tells us that as citizens, we should stand fast. That means to stand strong in the Lord, to hold firm to what we believe. So 3 things to think about this week in Lent, and then I'll get the children to come and show us their pictures. You've got 30 seconds left. I want to see your heaven pictures. First of all, follow godly examples here on earth. Be a godly example here on earth to those that follow you. Avoid those who are the enemies of the cross, those earthly desires that drag us away from living as a true citizen of heaven. And then the final thing is, are we living each day, each part of our lives, like a citizen of heaven?